Alright, I think I'm the first person on the internet to say this, but it's time to stop. I'm sick to death of people bad-mouthing Kochie and how Pedestrian has been pushing for years that Karl Stefanovic is cooler because Channel 9 bought them and that's basically the reason they exist. How sad is that? An entire news organization dedicated to making Karl Stefanovic look cooler than Kochie. And they still failed. Look at that beautiful egg-shaped head. I could kiss it. If total tyranny was the water behind the dam, Kochie is the thin layer of democracy protecting us. He should be called the... no, damn. He's the only one in the mainstream media that sticks up for the Labour Party, and you can tell that he's a quiet Labour voter most of the time. He's probably one of those people that went, oh, I didn't like Mark, I thought he was a bit rude. The reason Kevin Rudd was elected in 2007 is purely because that man went, oh, you seem like a good bloke to me, Kevin, but if I were you, I'd change me slogan from Kevin 07 to 00 Kevin Licensed to Grill. You could sell some aprons, it'd be a fun day for the barbecue, everyone would get into that. And here he is again, doing a better job than the 7:30 report on his little 7:20 report of dispelling the lies of the Liberal Party. He does the ABC's job on a commercial format.
So you're up in the polls, not enough to win yet.
You can tell he's from Adelaide. What a polite man. Not enough to win yet. Labour is headed for its biggest electoral victory since Bob Hawke in '83, and Shorten hasn't even chugged one beer yet. Can you imagine how far the electoral lead would be? The opposition would just be Scott Morrison sitting in the press gallery going, shut up, let me sit down there.
1.25 million jobs, that's my pledge to the Australian people. We've created around about that over since we were last elected.
Which is mentioned in a previous video. No, he didn't. If the Prime Minister was that Windows paperclip, the million jobs that they're bragging about would have been created anyway because that is in alignment with population growth in this country. So essentially what they're saying is, we just looked at a statistic that was going up naturally and we clapped it on, we said, yep, good for you. That is what they're bragging about.
We've got that by ensuring that we keep taxes low, back small business.
Just so everyone knows, the last person to lower taxes for the average Australian was Julia Gillard. Sure, the Liberal Party's lowered taxes for companies like Shell. It'd be great if there's some Aussie battler watching this who's Michelle and she'd be like, yay, my nickname's Shell.
Invest in the infrastructure Australia needs and Queensland needs in particular.
The Liberals halved infrastructure spending in this country, and when he's going, when the infrastructure that Queensland so sorely needs, it's in seats that the Liberals so sorely need to retain. That's what they're spending it in. So in other words, it's a deep pork barreling. It's not infrastructure that is needed. For instance, they're not interested in building the rail line in Brisbane that Labor's been clamouring for the last 15 years. Instead, they're just useless projects. Basically pretty much the equivalent of saying, we're going to build a giant water slide from the Gold Coast to the Sunshine Coast. Never be angry about getting up and going to work in the morning again.
And supporting new industries as well, whether it's in the medical sector or in defence industries.
They cut $50 billion from hospitals. How does that help jobs in the medical sector? Well, it teaches them that life can turn on you like that. And, you know, life lessons are always more important than money.
That's how we'll deliver the jobs in the future.
Okay, so you can keep that momentum going?
Absolutely. I mean, the jobs growth has been one of the hallmark signatures of our government.
Again, those jobs would have been created if there wasn't a Prime Minister, if it was just an empty office where kids just walked in and went, and you'll see there's a line that you can walk around and it will lead you right out of the office again. Even if that was it, those million jobs still would have been created. So essentially by him saying that job creation is the hallmark of my government, he's pretty much saying that the hallmark of my government is nothing.
Also, you say you're going to wipe out government debt, but since the coalition came to office, it's actually doubled government debt.
Testify, Kochie. Can Kochie go any harder? This is as mean-spirited as this gentle soul can be.
We still have deficits. We no longer, for the first time this year in this budget, will have a deficit.
First off, that's not true. By the most optimistic projections, it'll still be 0.6% of the budget. But on top of that, the reason that it is down is because they collected an additional $13.8 billion in tax revenue that they weren't expecting to collect. So Scott Morrison's pretty much just Walter Mitty, just like this huge chain of events that were completely out of his control that I meant to do that.
And it's my goal to get that down, net debt to zero over the next decade.
You are
not by increasing taxes, growing our economy.
What is with Scott Morrison's used car salesman hand gestures? Just some of these. Guaranteed! He has gone as Liberal Party as it possibly can be. I've always said that they're just a party of real estate agents. Look at him. Should this man have done anything else? The only career change he ever should have made is not from Treasurer to Prime Minister, is just, LJ Hooker is offering me a slightly higher commission. On top of this, let's just re-listen to him on a roll.
That has brought the budget back into surplus, that we'll be announcing in April. That will bring the debt down, and it's my goal to get that down, net debt, to zero over the next decade.
Who's his speech coach? Rabbits from the NRL. Once you pay down the deficit, you can get the debt over the line, and can you do it? It's going for it. Surplus! Unbelievable! Everything to me is unbelievable. The fact that my wife puts bread in the toaster and it comes out as toast. Did you see that?
You are scaremongering though, aren't you, when you say that Australia will go into recession if Labor is elected?
Well, I didn't say that. What I said was that there will be a weaker economy under Labor than there will be under my government.
No, there will not. In fact, historically, the exact opposite is true, and I'll post up a cool meme for you to look at that gives you all the facts and completely misses the point of being a meme, as it doesn't have a single joke in it whatsoever, but it charts where Liberal governments have been on the OECD ranking as opposed to Labor governments. It goes Fraser, 20th best in the world, Paul Keating, 6th best in the world, John Howard, during the peak of global economic prosperity, 10th, then it goes to Rudd, who was 1st in the world, and then it's this guy at 34th. To use a phrase that I think the youth use a lot, get jiggy with that meme. You heard me. I said, have sex with it.
Will be a weaker economy because they're going to put $200 billion of higher and new taxes on the Australian economy. It'll be a sheet anchor on the Australian economy when we can least afford it.
A couple of issues with that, Scott. First is, how come you sound like you have a permanent cold even more than I do? But second, this number they keep throwing around of $200 billion in taxes. Could you lift $200 billion? No, it's a weight in itself. That's how it's going to hold down the economy. All of that money is coming from rich property investors, corporations that the Liberal Party has done favours for and just given them $200 billion in taxes. Labor Party is just saying, how about we just go back to the taxes that we had under the Hawke-Keating governments, which Scott Morrison later on in this clip gives credit to as being good government. The thing of them saying that, oh, we'll cut taxes and that'll create growth, by their own estimates, think about how sad that is. Their company tax cuts will create 1% growth over the next 40 years. Most of my audience is 20. In just 2 of your lifetimes, you will have an unnoticeable level of growth. Meanwhile, public spending is creating 1% of the growth in this country each and every year. And you know where we get the money for public spending? Taxes! Having said that though, I do like the fact that he does this hand gesture, and I am thinking about voting for him.
Labor putting $200 billion of more and higher taxes on the economy can only slow it down.
They've been pretty good. They've been pretty good economic. I know it's un-Australian to acknowledge anything that a politician does well, but Labor were pretty good economic managers back at the GFC.
God, I love David Kochie. He is the human equivalent of a boiled egg and Vegemite toast for breakfast. You can't go wrong with him.
They kept us out of going into recession.
I'm sorry. No, I can't agree with that. That's when they ran up the debt and the deficit and poisoned our budget and put our AAA credit rating at...
And that's when you know you've sinned, when Kochie brings out the no. That is as outrageous a statement as you could possibly make for David Kochie to go, no. He'd only say to that, or if he had a guest on that said, you know, this figure of Pol Pot killing 2 million Cambodians, it is greatly overestimated.
No, I can't agree with that. That's when they ran up the debt and the deficit and poisoned our budget.
And the reason they got us into debt, the 3rd smallest amount of debt in the developed world, ooh, I feel like I'm drowning in obligation, was to bail us out of the GFC. This country avoided the worst economic conditions since the Great Depression, completely. As a result of that, Wayne Swan won Best Treasurer in the world. Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz, who won his Nobel Prize for his work on the global financial crisis, said that guess which government in the developed world had the best response to the global financial crisis? Ni hao. And I do say ni hao because even though I know that Kevin Rudd was born in Queensland, come on, look at him. Ethnically, he is Chinese. Either that or his dad's the magic pudding. As a result of their management, we were the best managed economy in the OECD. And Scott Morrison is sitting there and saying, that is not impressive enough. The man who is 34th in the OECD. You know how irritating it is when you have a backseat driver? That is like Wayne Swan driving a bus and Scott Morrison is in the back seat in the 34th row going, turn right now. Now. No, that's it. Give me the wheel. I'll drive it from back here and I'll still do a better job. As a disgruntled bus driver would say to a difficult passenger, where do you get off?
And put our AAA credit rating at risk.
Tally number 2 of, no.
The reason we were able to come through that was because our banks were strong.
And the reason our banks were strong was not because of you. You deregulated them as soon as you got into power. Sure, the Labor Party deregulated them in the 80s, but not to the point that Reagan did, where it was just, it's basically a casino now. They put in the 4 pillars. The 4 pillars document is another reason why we avoided the global financial crisis. There's people that say that it was China. It was a mixed bag, but you cannot say that it was not a result of their exceptional management throughout this and in the 80s.
You can't trust Labor with money. Okay. Australians know that.
I'm just quoting The Economist magazine in London that gives both sides of our politics basically a 5-star rating on economic management. Anyhow.
Well, I don't think you can give that to Bill Shorten. I think you can give Paul Keating a nod for that, and I think you can give Bob Hawke. But the difference is
that too.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't agree with them, and I don't think the Australian people did either.
All right.
Serve him, Kochie. I mean, you just can't say it because of his nature, but in the internet world, destroyed. He is the only one in commercial media that dares challenge the Liberal Party. On top of that, he did this righteous rap.
What's wrong with the world, mama? People living like they ain't got no mamas. I think the whole world's addicted to the drama, only attracted to the things that'll bring you trauma.
So you know how 4chan's always announcing Trump as the God Emperor? God Tortoise of Australia. This man right here, he really shows that slow and steady wins the race. You just sit there with a voice that everyone thinks, is my refrigerator rattling? And there you go, 16 years on television, keeping guard, making sure that that democracy water doesn't flow over on the dam. And make sure that you press the like button like you're a Buddhist monk rubbing David Koch's head for good luck. I'll see you in 2 days where I'll just watch more morning television and go, it's just not the same without Carl.
Please share and comment below. Comment.